Thank you very much for the introduction. I feel very honored to have opportunity come here to give this talk. And I apologize that I had to sit down because I like to record my own speech. And I apologize I do not have a paper because the subject matter covered a wide spectrum of the thing. It was difficult for me to organize. So I begin with saying that this journal to me means a lot. Most important is my friendship with Professor Chen Suheng. Now, I know very little about economic, but I do have some experience actually work on the investment and so on and so forth. Uh, but I don't have any theoretical background about economic. I do realize that the economy is so important. Right after the Cultural Revolution, I went to China and I saw in Beijing this watermelon piled up like a mountain. And I just feel so badly. I said the economy has to be the most important subject for any society. So I really have a passion for try to learn about economic. And in 1998, 97, I finally have a chance to meet Professor Chen, and then we're beginning to collaborate. Now, Professor Chen also at UCLA took a large courses about the modern control, which is really the prelude to the AI revolution at that point. And one of the very important driving force is National Science Foundation strongly encouraged during 1980s for any university that the economic professor and the engineering professor, especially in control, should cooperate. And there was substantial amount of the funding available, encouraged for that matter. And my guess is UCLA probably is one of those. That's the reason why Professor Chen, although he took his own initiative, decided to explore this new territory and come to the electrical engineering. UCLA modern control was very strong at that point. Statistic, common filter, Pontryagin maximum principle, stochastic control, and on down the line. And that's how we bring our friendship together, and that end up with this particular journal. The name of the journal actually does not reflect what's happening now and also in the future, but I'm very happy that we evolution of this journal eventually end up with economic become the main thing, and legitimately it's economic journal now. And I feel very bad that I not be able to change the name with economic title on it because the publisher, World Scientific, refused to change the name. And the journal, on the other hand, are getting improved every year, and now is definitely self-auditing. And there's no doubt in my mind in the future, this will be a very important and also unique journal in economic. Uh, However, in order to understand this journal where it come about, you had to go back to the Information Science Journal. Information Science Journal is published by Elsevier. And frankly, I took my personal risk, decide to take this route academically. And there's no doubt in my mind it has impact on my career. But finally, Duke University appreciate what I have done. After I retired for 15 years, I still have a big office over there. And they treat me very good because a certain thing eventually they finally realize that it's a good thing to do. The reason I mention that is the academic discrimination, and I call it academic discrimination is the worst discrimination of all kind. Namely, it's academic unit is a basic department, and that's where the budget comes from. Associated with that is a professional society. Now, IEEE is a professional society, has a high-rise building, used to be in New York City, now it's in New Jersey. And that's a big, important organization. The computer science came in later, and their organization is called ACM. Now the ACM computer scientist is with a background, they were more inclined mathematics, software, algorithm, and all that, computation complexity. And now they also work on economic, but most in computational complexity. The electrical engineering, the control is a very important part of it. However, ACM and the IEEE do not really work together. They both are giant, very big. And then I was involved with information science, which is published by Elsevier. I knew nothing about Elsevier, except I know that the Holland, way back 14th, 13th century, historically in Europe, they are very big in the publishing business. So I sort of took a risk with, again, not supported by my colleague from physics, mathematics, or engineering colleague at the Duke, because your career does not measure by the commercial publishing company. And if you are either on the hardware side, you manufacture chips, or the software side, most mathematics. So in either way, you do not want somebody to be associated with commercial publishing business. But nevertheless, I told them that I see the potential that the hardware and the software and it must get together. And now, of course, with AI revolution, these were the foundation built up back in the old day. The Information Science Journal, Professor Chen is one of the pioneers, introduced economic to the information science. Why not? Information science is big. Information revolution, the whole society is heavily the information, and Professor Chen has tremendous courage. And indeed, at the time, information science was not strong position, and we published at a very early stage many special issues, and that's all initiated by Professor Chen. As we evolve, the information science as time go by become big. To make story short, what's happened today is information science publish more than 24 volumes every year, and demand is so big. The subscription rate is called, at least 3 years ago, more than $8,000 a year. And then it's a huge market worldwide. The impact factor recently, I understand, is over 6. The ACM, the highest publication they got is about 3 or 4, and in IEEE even worse. If you get 2.5, are very happy. That will help you to get tenure, to get a promotion, and so on and so forth. Now here's somebody not involved with either ACM or IEEE, and then we decide with Professor Chen and some other people to take our own risk and go to a territory which nobody hunt. As it turned out today, Uto is the editor-in-chief now that I resigned, but still remain as a special issue editor until today. The success of the information science journal, I would illustrate by only one example what's happening at the Duke University. One of the Duke alumni in computer science doing so good and become multi-billionaire in Silicon Valley. And he said, he liked Duke so much, he said, I want to give $100 million offer, and then for to pull the computer chip people, hardware from electrical engineering and the computer science together and work together, and as a academic unit independent at Duke University, because information revolution, AI revolution, now is time call for such, two of them emerge together. Well, you know what? The cultural difference between engineering and ACM, the talk fall apart, and the offer is still standing. We do not know what will happen in the future. But independently, the engineering has another source of the donation, $300 million, but that has nothing to do with information. The reason I mention this is what you try to do, we did not accomplish in academically. However, we accomplished it through journal. And that journal used to be, my colleague was saying, we're supposed not to support commercial publication, we should go for the society. And in this case, we prove society not be able to deliver something, academic not be able to deliver something, but through this journal, we have done it. And the Duke University realized that. It's kind of irony that everybody think about career paths, but to fail to see certain thing which is even more important. But I do not blame on federal government because they're doing good job. National Science Foundation has pushed for multidisciplinary research, but that is not an easy task. People with a different background, with different cultural background. And on the way coming here, we have a taxi, and then we get into conversation. And he said, I never eat any restaurant food. I asked him what kind of food you like. He said, I just home cooking. My wife just cook for me, and I know nothing for the restaurant. And I really feel so sorry because so many different food are so good that only in United States we can see that. And also in United States, free enterprise, which allow me to be able to work against the establishment and then eventually accomplish something. Even today they try to do, they couldn't do it. But anyway, the evolution of this journal, it became clear that the economic and the development of the AI and the people involved, we realized that we should do something differently, namely just try to find what kind of mathematics are suitable in order to help social science. Now, I personally feel why in a university, the mathematics were heavily used by physicists because they fit the model so beautifully. They were lucky. Differential equation, partial differential equation. When you have a Maxwell equation, you might go to a different space situation, multiply parameters a little bit, but basically the model still is a Maxwell equation. As an engineer, all my life, I finally realized the mathematics we deal with it always has a symbol equal. If you have an equal, you have a differential equation, then if you know the initial condition, your solution is unique. Now, you take a simultaneous three-dimensional hyperplane, two of them put together, you find an intersection, which is a line. If you have a three, then what happens? You end up with a point, and that means uniqueness. So the mathematical application is always uniqueness. Uniqueness becomes very important. I would say mathematics should be divided into two types. One is precise mathematics. The precise mathematics, in my opinion, including, for example, statistics. Statistics is based upon hypothesis, axiom, but statistics itself is precise. Although it deals with random, but the mathematics is precise. And then you come to another issue, such as another application. All my life as an engineer, we deal with mathematics, also have an equal. Now, this equivalent class, in the sense of the relationship, we know is something very special. Now, for example, you talk about linear programming. The only difference of linear programming, not on with equal, your concern could be greater or less. When you have a greater or less, you're talking about relation. When you relate on the relation, you have a brand new ball game. That is the reason linear programming becomes so powerful, because it deals with the optimal solution. That's because you have a relation involved. Rafi Zadi, actually, he was very much for AI. Actually, he tried to make a contribution on AI. The AI problem eventually turned out to be the language problem. All the AI community realized to the end, the AI issue really is a natural language issue. And that turned out to be difficult. But the Rafi thought this would be revolutionary because the language relate to the social science, literature, political science, philosophy, anything you name it. Now we ask the question, why on the campus, many departments use very, very little mathematics? If the mathematics cannot make a contribution, we don't use mathematics. We use mathematics because it can help to have a better understanding and to solve the problem better. And that is the reason why. Mathematics is not number crunching. It represents some pattern. In a sense, you try to discover the pattern in terms of the time and the space variation, and that covers a lot of ground to the geology and everything on down the line. However, why we are not using mathematics that much? Now, when the AI revolution toward the end, eventually you had to apply to a lot of society problem, and that means social science. Computer science already worry about computation for social science. But this area was not very successful because economic structure as such, when you do the social worker, I deal with poor people, and there's not much funding over there, but yet it's important to the humanity. But I really feel that in the future, it's going to be very, very important. Now, I also come to some kind of understanding that the future of a foundation in AI go back to really the basic, namely the set theory, the relation, and the logic. We hear a lot of logic, a lot of work being done on this line, and the relation it's a little bit like in technology in the old day, where the AI was beginning 1956 at Dartmouth, that was coined as AI. Now you should realize that at that point in engineering or in computation field, the debate still going on, analog and the digital, which one is more important, analog computer or digital computer. Obviously, the digital win the war, and the analog, one of the problem is you build up the error and which accumulate. And this is precisely the problem deal with social science or literature and so on and so forth. Because when you accumulate the error, then the analog computer turns out to be useless. So the digital proved to be much more powerful, and that win the war. Even at that point, the beginning of the AI situation, we understand that even the computer was at the formation period. So the AI today, we see a lot of things going on over there. I think Professor Chen UCLA experience is related to 1980 National Science Foundation thing. I'm sure, Professor, there was some motivation in order for that to happen. Now, even today, what's happening in engineering, in my department, electrical engineering, we have a Chinese master's degree come in and pay all the tuition, and that turned out to be the tuition amount to several $1 million per year. The Duke is not alone. Stanford University, University of Illinois, even have a lawyer lending insurance in order to make real sure if this Chinese money, once a sudden stop, it will have impact University of Illinois' budget. So they insure, the university insure with the Royal of London if that money stop. Electrical engineering today is the only place at Duke University that you learn machine learning, deep learning, and big data. And these students are all from economic, anything to do with economic or finance. And that is become very, very important integral of the departmental activity. The reason I mentioned that is important of the multidisciplinary research. But I'm just very, very happy that this journal, under leadership of Professor Chen, even before that, I would like to say a few words that the evolution process was not simple. But that's just like election. Finally, you elect some president. So this journal, we try many things. We had the Perovsky from Russia. He was the #1 semiotic. And he was in Japan, and the US Air Force feel he need to come to this country and contribute to the AI, because that had to do with automata control and everything we see today, unmanned driving and so on and so forth. So he became a colonel in a US research outfit. So he was very much a part of this journal. Another professor, when Professor Chen asked me to come here, I said, I feel very strongly, I'm willing to try to find all possible means for Professor John Mortensen to be here. And I'm very happy that he has a colleague here represent, that he might relay some of the things to him. He's a wonderful human being. So this journal actually is a part of a Creighton University mathematics department, because under his leadership, there are several professors who devote. When Rafizadeh introduced fuzzy, basically you generalize the set theory. Used to be Boolean, 0, 1. Now the set is mapped into 0 and 1. So as a result, the generalization end up with fuzzy algebra, fuzzy field, fuzzy group, fuzzy everything. And this body of the work, the very best work, is done by Creighton University under leadership of John Modison, who published many books in this area. So this journal is a tribute also to John Modison, that he built up a body of the knowledge currently are not being applied much. There are some, but not a whole lot. But the truth of the mathematics and then will exist over there forever. So we really feel bad. He is a marathon runner and some knee problem and not be able to travel. Otherwise, I'm sure he will be here today and share with you. And that's also very happy notes about this journal, where the other field that we explore, including because the language with AI, we saw that China is on the rise during that period of time. Maybe we look at the Chinese language with AI. Maybe a robot will speak Chinese. We were very naive at that point. Our journal make an effort and have some special issue over there, and that's some example which does not sustain. So eventually, finally, sustain is economic, and now it's a legitimate economic journal. But John Modison deserves tremendous credit by develop a body of work that's even our journal, our conference, joint conference, Professor Chen was a part of to build up for that particular conference, actually has more impact than official professional society. I mentioned professional society, and a body of the work now exists over there due to the Creighton University. It's a very fine Catholic university. I was very impressed to be able to privilege to know John Modison. However, that particular field, looking at the future, is not like economic, has a tremendous potential, and there's no doubt the economy will be dominate this. But I simply hope that not only economic, eventually this journal might be involved with like a literature, comparative study. When you have some problem, the best you can use mathematics is not to get the precise answer, but to get a regional answer or relative understanding, and that can be accomplished by the set theory. The Helmholtz set theory simply said the naive set with operation, you build up complexity by different operation, you can generate infinity subset. And the plus logic turned out to be very, very powerful. And then the set theory as well as the relation, and I believe will be applicable to many, many problems. For example, you can compare American Civil War and Chinese Civil War. What's the difference? And all these can be used in mathematics. You do not get precise answer, but you can comparative. So other than economic, then this journal, I'm just very, very happy, has a tremendous future under Professor leadership, and now it's definitely, I hope, will become an important journal in economics. Thank you very much.
So maybe